Hi, everybody. Uh, welcoming, it's a great welcome to all of you, for joining us on this beautiful Sunday afternoon in this interview series where we are interviewing pioneers and leaders of the data science community of India. I am Guru Prasad. I'm a senior data scientist at Novartis. I'm a physician by training with a master's in pharmacology and a doctorate in clinical pharmacology from AIIMS Delhi. I also have with me Prakash Jawar, who is a senior manager at TransUnion based out of Mumbai. He has a master's in maths and computing from IIT Guwahati. So just before I hand over to Prakash, just a few words on the Data Science Community India chapter. This community is, comprises of 20 WhatsApp groups and a LinkedIn group. It's quite an active group. There's no spamming, and we have a diverse, the community that is there is quite diverse, from students to freshers all the way to leaders. And there's a lot of active learning and contribution going on. Anybody who's interested genuinely in this field, I would encourage you to join us. The details will be provided below here. So with that, I hand it over to Prakash.
Thanks, Guru. So, thanks for the introduction and mentioning about the community. So, as usual, this is our third of its kind of interview session with one of the industry leader. So, I will directly come to his profile. So, Anthony is our today's key person, and he is an information management professional with close to 17 years of work experience in the insurance industry. In his earlier role, he was the chief data officer at SBI General, and he was the first CDO in India to set up an enterprise level data governance program within an insurance organization. His work at SBI General has been published as a case study in the book Handbook of Data Quality by Springer. Anthony is currently heading the insurance practice at SAS India and specializes in conducting data management and analytics maturity assessments and providing thought leadership frameworks, best practices, and innovation in the space of data strategy and analytics. He has completed his executive management program from IIM Lucknow and is an information quality certified professional IQCP from IAIDQ USA. So thanks, Anthony, for sparing your time, for giving your time on this, Sunday afternoon. And our audiences will be, will love to hear more from you. So our last speaker, Ariful is from CRISIL London. He is the, he's the director of CRISIL Global Research Analytics. So I have, invited him personally that if he can come and ask few questions to you, because I know you, and I believe that if someone like Arif can get involved into a conversation with you, this will definitely create lots of value. So over to you, Arif. You can start the session now.
Thank you, Prakash.
Thank you, Prakash. Really honored that you have invited again, and I'm really grateful to be part of this community. Just started maybe less than a month, right? I see a lot of things happening, and great to meet you, Anthony. Yes, thank you for your time and welcome.
So, the feeling's mutual. I would like to thank your team to have me over. I'm pretty excited. I think if all of us have got together on a Sunday evening, it just goes to show that how passionate we are about the field that we are in. So yeah, great to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, great. So without further delay, probably I'll start some conversation to understand about your journey and through that, and then Prakash, Guru, they'll chip in, right? So to start with, right, I've seen that you have kind of a transition, not like us to start with the statistic modeling or data analysis. You have a transition from business to data management, governance, analytics, right? So back in 2006-7, and the time we also started, I think 2-3 years back, right? So nobody used to know even the data analytics, what it is, right? So how did you take like the decision, right? Did you see that foresee that there would be something like this industry coming up and you have a great career ahead?
Yeah, the honest answer to that, and I'll just come straight to the point over there, is that I think if I could have predicted back in 2006 that data is going to be the next big thing, then I seriously could predict anything in life. So that was definitely not the case, and I can very humbly say that the career chose me, and it's not that I have chosen the data management, the data field. But yes, I was fortunate, and I think one of the reasons why for 17 years I have been in this field, I've never ever moved out. 17 years back when I started off my career, I think my first 6 months, I started off my career from an organization called Godrej Consumer Products, which is into FMCG, and I got placed straight out of my bachelor's of management studies course. I was placed. It was the first. I was part of the first batch, which and then the Mumbai University had come up with this course around BMS. And my job at Godrej Consumer Products was, they had this entire sales field, a sales force on the field who would actually go out to the distributor points and ensure that what they call as the stock keeping units to be distributed. And my role over there was to really understand the supply chain, the market dynamics, why certain SKUs are doing well or not doing well, and our job was to really feed intel back to the HOs. That was what my role was, and for almost 4 to 5 months I was on ground, and I haven't even taken that designation of my CV. I was designated as field officer. They were quite literal with their designations those days.
Right.
And they used to have this practice, and I'm sure most of the FMCG companies had the practice at that point of time when, at the month end, they used to just dump these stocks at the distributor point, right? There's very little analytics, or there was very little data mining that used to happen to understand what is the amount of stock we should push to the distributor point. It was the last day of the month would typically be a very agonizing interaction between a sales guy and the distributor. The distributor says, I don't want the stocks to be dumped at my end. But cutting the long story short, what got me excited is immediately after that at Godrej, there was a project, which they called, or they named as Sampark. I remember the name of the project as well, where they introduced a system which would very intuitively and analytically look at the data, and obviously deployment of forecasting models was also used to really accurately predict what is the stock we should push to the distributor point. Now that was a win-win, because the distributor obviously gets the required level of stocks coming to his end. That means his money is not stuck, because he otherwise has to pay up big amounts. And at the other hand, the organization is able to tell the distributor or give the distributor enough rationalization with the help of data as to why we are doing what we're doing. Now, that was the moment for me where I realized that, magic could happen with data, right? And there is so much that you could do. And it was a sheer passion that I have stuck to that field, and you very correctly said, along my journey from Godrej to SBI and now at SAS, I have worn multiple hats. I have been in teams where I was expected to set up reporting capabilities. I have worked in teams where I work very closely with IT to set up data strategy. I worked with data strategy specialists to set up data governance programs. And in my last stint at SBI General, I even set up an analytics COE. So if my answer to your question is the career chose me, and I'm just blessed, and somebody called me an expert. I clearly feel I'm a student in this world where there is so much of disruption. There is something new happening every day. I think none of us can claim ourselves to be expert, but student. Yeah. Sorry, relatively a long answer to a short question.
No.
Sorry for that.
No, that's great. But I also suggest people to be close to the business reports, right? And it is rightly you said that there's a right place to start. A lot of us not get chance to work from that side. We start from the data and probably move to business some point of time, right? So yeah, so you worked in CPG. I also worked in CPG sometime, but insurance seems to be very conservative, right? Actuarial was very popular and etc. Right? How the adoption happening in the insurance industry, and what you see the challenges, and how to kind of overcome those, right? If you can throw some light on that, that would be great.
So I'll answer the first question from an adoption perspective. Insurance has been a laggard. I think some of their counterparts in other industries have really picked up and latched onto analytics quite early, which is surprising. Data is the raw material for everything that happens in an insurance organization, right? Like every product is based on data, the pricing is based on data. So I keep saying that this is my favorite quote, even when I was on the other side, data is the raw material. So if for an industry, data is the raw material, then analytics is a no-brainer. But having said that, you're right. The actuaries obviously adopted it when de-tarification happened in India around 10, 15 years back. And that's when they wanted to take up risk-based pricing. The actuaries really adopted it. Last 5 years, I can safely say the extension has moved from pricing to across the insurance value chain. There are underwriters who want their processes to be automated. That is really being able to understand and identify a risk more intelligently. They today depend on archaic business hunch-related business rules. They want to move from that to adopting an AI/ML model, which can mine deep into the data and help them identify a micro segment rather than a broad segment. Claims teams are more and more under pressure now to cut down costs. So fraud detection is one of the biggest use case in insurance. The entire distribution itself has got challenged, and more so because of COVID. A hugely intermediated industry for those who are not from insurance. Close to 90% of the business comes through an intermediary. I either depend on an agent or a broker or a bank to get my customers. So the distribution channel conventionally was intermediated. That's getting disrupted and questioned. I think CEOs are asking their teams to revisit the distribution journeys for a customer. How can you kind of intuitively recommend products to customers when they're on the website? So that's distribution sales. I mentioned claims. There is a lot that's happening in operational analytics where image, computer vision, text analytics is all kind of playing a huge role. But I'll just break it into two parts. Part one, the conventional good old analytics where still the big problems are getting solved: persistency, retention, risk modeling is maturing. And the second part of computer vision, image analytics, text analytics, some organizations are in POC stage. They're still trying to, because some of them are really difficult problems, right? Your capability to detect or estimate the claim value of a damaged vehicle by just looking at an image, easier said than done, is a very difficult problem to solve. So you need to have very solid libraries built in, and you need a very capable team. You need very strong technology platforms to achieve that. So that area is kind of still in a POC pilot stage, while you will see a lot of advertisements where insurance companies say they just click a photograph and your claim just kind of gets processed. I had seen a very wonderful joke cartoon in one of the newspaper where there are human beings sitting behind when just to kind of prove the point that it's an AI/ML driven organization, but it's just people sitting behind. So I don't want to demean the industry, but a lot of them are doing that because they've not yet attained that maturity. I'm sure they will, and they will get there eventually. But a lot of money are still in the conventional areas of persistency, retention, cross-sell, upsell. There is just so much of money. So if I have to make a business case and go to my CEO, maybe some of my use cases might still be the one which are not very shiny, the shiny use cases of advanced AI/ML use cases. But we'll eventually get there, is what my guess is. Yeah.
Yeah, I think nicely said, right? So probably you have to fix the, we used to call, right, run the bank and change the bank, right? It's kind of, you have to adapt how you're running your insurance business and grow fast and then innovate, right? Probably the risk-based pricing, right? Using mobile app, collecting data, all of these will coming in India as well, right? It's
Right.
in Western country they have started. I have a little bit experience working with some of them, but I think that somewhere people will go. But you rightly said that traditional analytics is the key, right? I think good news for statisticians, econometricians, and things that instead of thinking of too much machine learning AI, they have a good career in insurance and a wonderful field to be in, right? Thank you. Yeah, so probably I'll ask related to your first like question that I asked, right? So if not the data analytics CDO or kind of role that you have, do you think that being in a business kind of maybe chief operating officer or other CXO, right, would have been a better role for you? And what do you think, right, that could have been a better choice for you?
I mean, where I stand today in my career, I really wake up every day morning with so much excitement. I really love what I'm doing. But would be very unfair for me to say that the other areas, I wouldn't, maybe there are not interesting roles for me. I believe that what I see in the industry that's happening is everyone in the organization needs to be aware of the power of what AI ML is, right? And I don't think so. It's just a chief data officer or a chief analytics officer's prerogative to really drive AI ML. I very strongly believe that if an organization needs to really achieve their digital aspirations, then everybody needs to be wearing that hat at some point of time. I'm not expecting a CEO, a chief operating officer, or a chief marketing officer to understand how models are built or how models can be monitored, how DevOps work. No, they don't need to know that. But they definitely need to understand, so there are these interesting roles like chief digital officers, and I interact with a lot of them in the industry when I meet them, and they practically don't carry out analytics, or they don't take care of data per se, but they have this very unique responsibility of marrying the world of what the business really wants and how you can embed AI ML into the processes, right? And how do you make all the processes digital? So they have a very tough job in terms of balancing it. So yeah, I'm pretty happy where I am, and I don't think so I have an answer to the question. Whether I would have been doing something more interesting, but yeah, I as I go along, I clearly see there is a lot of money on the table in the areas where digitization and all is happening, and I think if there are rules, then yeah, definitely that is the next move for me, where I might just want to try that, because chief digital officer or the entire digitization journey, I believe, is the next big thing, and I think COVID has really accelerated that.
Yeah. So I think we have accelerated maybe a couple of decades due to COVID in the digitization.
Absolutely.
Right, and adoption increased, which is really great. Right, I think you have answered a little bit of the next question, right? So kind of working with other CXOs, right, and like CDOs, CDOs, digital officers, also CDOs or CMOs or others. So how you are adding value to that organization, and do you think like in the data analytics space is really as you mentioned, right? So it's kind of oil as well as raw materials, right? So how we are adding value, right? From your perspective, how you're adding value, specifically from the SaaS, right? So I worked in SaaS, like with SaaS, and not with the company, right? So I'm a great advocate of SaaS, right? So almost 15, 16 years. So so how you are adding value to that organization, other CXO organization?
I think it's a good question. I hear this in a lot of events that I attend, and obviously I might just end up giving a cliched answer to this as well. But I'm going to go a little deeper to help maybe the people on the call to understand how we could really make that happen. So I think so the cliched answer obviously is that you need to work closely with business, understand what the business drivers are, understand what their KPIs are. We hear this in a lot of events. And they are all the right things to do, but you need to make it happen. And for you to make it happen, you need to have some frameworks, you need to have some practices set up within an organization for it to become part of your DNA, for your organization DNA, right? How does a business guy and an analytics guy work together, right? With my experience, we have done a poor job. We have done an extremely poor job, and I'm pretty skeptical about it with my 15-16 experience on the other side, and more so when I've come on to a consulting side now, when I meet a lot of people in the organizations. That's a big gap, right? I don't think so. Data and analytic teams and business really work well together. So I would just, and obviously due to paucity of time, just share something what I had done with SBI General, which initially I obviously struggled establishing, but later on was successful, is by establishing some frameworks within an organization where you could go ahead and give it any fancy name, call it an analytics competency center, or I call it a business intelligence competency center when I was at SBI General. And the idea was very simple. And I said, listen, and the CEO told me, Anthony, I want you to set up, this was around 8 years back, 7 years back, the CEO told me, Anthony, I want you to set up an analytics COE. We're doing very little with data. I know you've done a wonderful job with data governance and the reports, and I think the hygiene part is taken care of, but monetization is something that needs to happen now. And I knew that, I knew what the business problems were, but I also knew that I'm going to get into an adoption problem if I don't take business along with me, right? So I went ahead and obviously I was guided, and I was, we had signed up with some consultants. I was fortunate to be guided by them, and I set up this BICC cell, which is basically a body within your organization where somebody from your fraternity, which is an analytics lead or analytics head, a CAO, could be anywhere in the hierarchy, it doesn't matter, comes in. There are individuals from each department. There could be one guy from sales, appointed, very importantly, appointed by the CXO. Okay. Ensure that it is appointed by the CXO. Ensure that this is something which has the blessing of the chief executive officer. And there is a lot more accountability that way if the CXO appoints, right? So you would have somebody from the underwriting team, claims team, and depending upon your business areas, basically have a representation, meet once every month. From your perspective as an analytics team, share what your roadmap is, get a validation from them, try to understand what are the problems that we should pick up. A lot of the business guys will say, and everyone will say that I have a lot of problems. You need to prioritize them. You should be able to calculate value to some extent if you can. I know it's very difficult to calculate the business value of every use case you pick up. It's not going to be very easy. Like, I had my renewables head coming and saying, Anthony, the first use case that you should pick up is we will only survive if we retain our customers, right? If we don't retain our customers, then the organization doesn't exist. I want you to build a retention propensity model. There I would have the claims guys saying, I want you to pick up the fraud propensity model. And that's why I said, this is a bit of an art and a bit of a science and a bit of a lot of a people management, where you really take all these inputs through this very structured framework. Everybody is involved. Everybody has visibility on what is happening within the organization. And once a quarter, I used to get the CEO in, right, to preside over the meeting. And that was the norm. And this was all set expectations. So everyone who was on the BICC knew that every quarter there's going to be a CEO review. You really need to bring it. We are in India, and I'm sure all of you work with Indians, and we have our nuances as to what works with us. And this works, right? So again, this is one of the many things that I tried to bring a very default structure between business and analytics team, data and analytics team, where they very naturally collaborate and become part of. So every project is not a project driven by the analytics or the data team. It's a project driven by a core team, which will be one business guy, the analytics guy, there'll be someone from IT. You need a village to make it happen. So yeah, that's
great. I think yeah, I also feel that, right? Collaboration is key, and you need to include everyone in the organization to be successful, because I think in my interview they also asked, right? It's a choice or kind of how you look at data analytics, right? So it's become part of the business now. Earlier we used to push, we used to prove a point, right? You rightly said that you included, and I think for all upcoming data scientists, managers, they have to think that how they can work with business. I think collaboration, communication, all of them would be good, rather than like we feel like complacent, sticky. We are data scientists. We're doing some kind of sexy job. I think that's not the thing, right? You have to work with business, otherwise nothing is going to be successful. I strongly feel that, right?
Just one point
really,
on that, Arif. I think you made a very
yeah.
interesting point on, there will be some of the business users who would come in and, you might have to push them, right? Now, that's a very interesting point, and I think I didn't cover that, and I want to talk about it. Is you might have that one department coming in your meeting in the BICC and not talking anything, right? Now, again, that's where the analytics team comes in to understand what, and hence they keep saying, right? The analytics fraternity needs to have a sound understanding of business, right? So that guy might be keeping quiet in the meeting because he doesn't know what AI/ML can do for him, right? You have to probe, you have to go ahead and say, listen, I believe that if we drive this particular project within, your team, this is the value I believe that we can generate. And there is obviously a lot of calculation and math and a bit of an assumption that is required to build a business case, but you need to do that. So sorry, I thought I should add that to my point.
Excellent stuff. Thank you. I think really insightful. Hope we get to learn more from you. So with that, I'll request Prakash to discuss with you the next set of questions, or maybe some kind of ideas that we can get. Really, everybody would be helpful. Thank you again, Anthony.
Thank you, Arif.
So I'll be listening, and hopefully we can interact and do more things for this community. Let's see.
Thank you. Pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks. Yeah, thanks, Ariful. Pleasure, hearing from you from the other side. So last time we have heard from you, your complete 1 hour, and now the way you have asked the questions and you have, created a platform for us. It's really great. And also, Anthony, I am hearing you after almost 1 or 2 years. I remember my memories got refreshed together. So we are like clients and the other side. But yes, it was as usual lovely, hearing from you. So Anthony, we have a very, balanced team of volunteers who really work very hard in the back end, and they have really worked hard with all of us to frame the questions. So there are Kunal, Ketul, Sinjuti, then Natasha, Aditya. So all people, they are youngsters and they have joined us. So we have framed the questions in such a way that we can get to know you better. There are lots of areas into business where possibly, this is the area where business leaders would love to hear more from you. And Ariful, being a business leader, he asked all the questions specific to his vertical. So I will just come to some other parts where, where people really are looking for such a roadmap. So my earlier speaker, like Ujjani and Ariful, so basically their background, then what they were doing 5 years before, what they are doing now, and how they are established into the industry, from what academic background to what is the career level which they are into right now. So we try to map that, and our audiences are from diverse backgrounds, so they want a roadmap. So my next question on this line is, you don't have a pure quant background, which Ariful mentioned, but yet you are a successful business leader in analytics who understands the business, various nuances, and technological advancements. Any tips for the future analytics aspirants regarding various roles in analytics which can lead to a successful career like yours?
Okay, that's an interesting question. I think the fraternity, the analytics fraternity, obviously needs to understand that, and I think the more time we spend in this field of analytics, we realize that there is a role for, and there are multiple roles that exist within this space of analytics today, right? You have, and I was reading this very interesting article from Gartner, which spoke about ML debt, right? The hidden debt of ML, and there is so many activities that goes around even before a model is built, and there is so much work that happens after a model is built. More so now in the era of digitization, it's felt. So and I also realized, and so I was managing a 20-member team when I was at SBI General, and I think getting the right skill set is always a challenge. And looking for someone who knows everything is what I tried achieving, and I failed. It was very difficult to get skill sets which had experience in, let's say, data engineering, right, where the data pipelines could be set up. Let's call it data ops, for instance. You have the capabilities that are required in the area of actually building the model and monitoring the model, which we call as MLOps. And then we have this another big area now, which is really growing in a big way, which is DevOps, which is really the entire space of operationalizing the models, the entire world of APIs, right? Now, I believe that these spaces will mature as this entire analytics space matures, right? And each of these areas would need specialization, okay? And I believe you would need leaders who understand the entire data engineering piece well, right? And I'm assuming your question is not more from the perspective that will all of these lead to a CXO role, maybe not, okay? But you as an analytics professional should really look at wearing different hats as you go along. I was consulting an insurance organization. I was talking to an analytics professional, and he's someone who's been into building models, but not doing a great job at operationalizing those models, right? And they lack the skill set, right? They just lack the skill set. They don't understand the language. They don't understand the technicality, and the analytics fraternity will have to very quickly realize that there are multiple rules and these rules will mature. And if you are able to, let's say, over a span of 10 years or 12 years, play a role in data ops, ML ops, and DevOps, and do a fantastic job at that, I believe the sky is the limit. I think you could become a chief digital officer because you really, really understand very critical components. You obviously do need to understand business, which is a given. But you could look at a chief analytics officer role. You could look at a chief data officer role. I would see careers really moving that way for an analytics professional. I obviously came from a business background, and I don't have a quant background. It was always difficult. Whatever I have acquired is through reading, is through experience. So I understand a bit of technology, a bit of stats, and able to kind of balance that. A path for a technology guy would be really quickly being able to pick up the nuances of statistics, trying to understand. So obviously he understands data engineering, but I think the next best thing that he could really pick up is the capability on DevOps, right? Rather than getting into MLOps, right? So he's great at data ops, he's great at MLOps or DevOps, and then they can see, he can get into MLOps. So I'm not too sure if I'm making sense, but what I'm trying to get across is, I see if you're looking at a career path for an analytics professional, analytics today is not about just building models, okay? It is the smallest part in the entire thing, right? There are, if you are looking at ROI, if you're looking at business realizing value, then there are a lot of other areas outside analytics that exist, and an analytics professional has to look across for them to be deemed complete in that sense. I'm not too sure if I've done justice to your question.
Correct. So Anthony, it reminds me, one of my experience. I was speaking to some of very senior person. He said that if you are to data science and if you are coming from a physics background, or like Guru from a medical background, or like Ariful from a pure stat background, like me from a maths background, then someone only like for example BTech MBA, and then coming from a business background, ultimately all the roles converges to the same thing actually. So it's about how you measure the ROI or how you add value to any organization. So similar to what you said, that ultimately whatever roles you are doing in an organization as an analytics professional, maybe into data engineering, data governance, data modeling, data management, or implementation, ultimately it will lead to something where people should be able to measure the ROI and then try to get more value out of it. I think you are absolutely right on that line. And I have my next question on this similar line. I'll quickly come to that, which is similar to the application of analytics. The performance of analytics is also a challenge. So according to you, how should the leaders or the promoters or the CXOs, they should measure the analytics ROIs? So this is very, very important question, and we have got many similar questions on this line from many of our audiences. Yeah.
So I think this was a dilemma for me as well as a CXO. Even before I start a project and actually start showing ROI, I have to build a business case. And for a lot of my projects, I had to build business case. And for those business cases, you had to have a P&L made, because the CEO doesn't really, and that's a challenge in India. One of the biggest challenge in India is about, any investments and anybody wants to make in analytics. They are wary, they're not too sure, and I'm sure you would have read this statistics that only 50% of the models that get built actually get deployed. Half of them don't even see the daylight. So good question. My very crisp answer to that is there are use cases. There is no way you can get ROI. There are some use cases you cannot calculate ROI. Okay, like for instance, customer experience is something which is one of the hottest topic now, right? All the CEOs are talking about, I want to improve customer experience. And just a caveat, a lot of my comments would be pertaining to the insurance industry. So excuse me for that, because I represent the insurance industry in India, and my comments and my learnings and my experience are all basis what I hear from that industry. So customer experience, and the CEO says, I want to improve my NPS score, and and there would be other measures that you would have to kind of understand that your customer is really, really happy. But it's extremely difficult one, and it's very long term, right? You're not going to get these things quickly. So very difficult to measure. But if it's a fraud detection project that I want to get into, there are very clear numbers that I can put in, right? And the way any analytics professional should go about doing it is really understanding the process, trying to understand what is it that they do, and look at those KPIs that you can influence through analytics. For example, in fraud detection model, there is a KPI which is called as hit rate or a detection rate, right? Which is the number of claims that get investigated. Of the claims that got investigated, how many actually turned out to be fraudulent, right? Now that to me is a hit rate. Me getting into a meeting and saying that me being able to improve that hit rate by 1%, I can very easily translate that into money terms, right? Now that's how I build a business case, and that's how I go on to then track my project around. Same thing for cross-sell upsell models, right? I mean, you will have to make a prediction. Say if my current cross-sell model is say only as good as say 0.25%, and I'm actually quoting a very aggressive number, it's nowhere near that, but hypothetically, I could improve that by another 0.25%. I know you're from the insurance world, so I need to be very careful about what I say, Prakash. So how could I improve that? And if I improve that, then I'm doing a project right now with a general insurer to kind of plan their entire CLM journey, right? So we had to build a business case over there to tell them what is the probable amount, the GWP that we can get over a 3-year or a 4-year period, right? And we had to build that. So that's how I would go about, get down to the KPI and do your calculations backward, and then the CEOs only understand numbers, right? It's GWP for them, or you save them the cost, either top line or bottom line. That's how I approach. Be cognizant of the fact that some of the use cases, it's just not possible, and it's meaningless to really run after quantifiable ROI, because you just will not be able to attribute. There are some, like, people would get up and say that NPS is is a great metric for customer experience. I feel it's the most hollow metric the industry has ever come up with, because I don't think so NPS even comes closest to determine customer experience. You might as well get into all your voice data, mine your voice data, and listen to what your customer is saying. You will exactly know how bad your processes are. You will exactly know how deficient your products are. That's not something that the organization does, because that needs a lot of investment, right? So I'm digressing, but the point is we need to be cognizant about what can be measured, what cannot be measured. And I think the CEOs know that there are a lot of things that happen within an organization, it cannot be measured, right? There could be softer benefits of that, and those softer benefits have to be mentioned. That's the best that you could do.
Correct. I think, as you rightly said, that the results are both qualitative and quantitative. So we can measure the quantifiable outcomes, but possibly if the qualities are concerned, then possibly the trust is an important thing, and the vision is also an important thing. So that way, this is my next question, which is also interesting, and it is also already touching few of the answers which you have already given. But but still, I would like to ask you this question, which is the application of analytics in different industries have a broad range of results. Some work sooner and some work in the long run. So according to you, should analytics be looked at from a short-term or a long-term perspective? So you
The,
have touched
the
upon those perspective areas as short-term and long-term thing, but if you can put up some lights on, how, on what areas we could focus on the short-term outcomes and what areas we can look at the long-term, view.
Right, right. When I did my undergraduate, I did my BMS and I did my executive MBA from IIM Lucknow. I heard long term so many times in a lot of case studies, right? My God. And then you hit the corporate world, and then you're just looking for that person in the organization who thinks long term. I don't think so. CEOs are thinking beyond the quarter. Okay, I don't even want to say a year. That's the kind of conversation that is happening. Okay. But I don't want to sound pessimist or bleak. There are certain use cases which which I know will not realize value in the short term. There's just no way you could realize value. And I mentioned customer experience in my previous answer to you. If you're really looking at maybe even setting up a CLM capability within your organization, right, where you want to build a world of or really kind of building a hybrid model where your online customers and your offline customers are kind of brought together, and you're able to kind of derive value out of those customers in real time. It could be next best offers, it could be a cross sell upsell, old model. It could be a real time recommendation on the website. These kind of use cases. And if you have chalked out a plan, the results are not going to come up within sooner than a year or year and a half or 2 years, right? Because it's going to run its time. The important way to deal with the impatient CEO is showing them results every quarter, right? While the larger picture might take time, it is very, very, and I think people are growing increasingly impatient. That is what my experience is. But if you could show the long-term picture and keep kind of tracking what's happening in the short term, I think that is a smart way of managing things. So you are also considered strategic that way because you are thinking long term, but at the same time, you are aligned to your CEO because he is thinking short term. He's not thinking beyond 12 months. Okay. That is where the CEOs are. And there is this compounded disruption in the world that we are living today. Insurance, you would be aware, was already going through a lot of problem. The motor sector was badly hit. There was the entire development of the digital insurers coming in and disrupting, which is really opening up a blue ocean strategy within insurance. There was and then with all this happening, COVID hit, and I think so. It's so badly disrupted that you have to be very agile, have to be very have to be on your toes in terms of showing the management that there is value coming. If you can do it every month, and I know I'm being a little too aggressive saying every month, but if you could keep telling them that how the benefits are coming, they're with you, you're with them. Yeah, that's what my
Correct. Correct, and I think that is why, because it's a strategic department. That is why I have seen in many cases the analytics department lies under the CSO vertical, the Chief Strategy Officer. So in case that CSO vertical exists, it's okay. Otherwise, those kind of strategic departments also do take care of the analytics, departments also. I think so. Yeah. So so thanks, Anthony, for all your answers. There are certain questions which possibly we will not be able to touch upon today due to the lack of timing. But I will quickly hand it over to Guru. So Guru needs no introduction, but he is basically a doctor. He's an MBBS from AIIMS Delhi, and then he has molded his career into data science. And as he said, he's with Novartis. So I would hand it over to Guru now. Guru, over to you.
Thanks a lot, Prakash. Just one correction. I did my MBBS from Kerala. My higher studies was from AIIMS Delhi.
Yeah, sorry.
Thanks, Prakash.
In my mind, Delhi AIIMS, your number was saved with Delhi AIIMS, so I thought, yeah.
Thanks, Prakash. So those were actually great questions and great insights, Anthony. Something I'll take you to a direction which is something more close to my heart, which is more towards what we should focus on. So most people, especially new entrants in the data science is all about modeling, building models. Okay, so what I wanted to know from you is, as what is more close or what is more valuable to a CXO or business unit heads with regards to the analytics value chain? For example, is it actually the modeling, building models that can predict the future, or is it management information reports, information management, or through machine learning and predicting predictive models? Some insight on that would be quite useful.
Yeah, I think there's no direct answer to that question. I think what's close to the heart of a business guy is his business problem. Okay, there's nothing more closer to him than that, and that's what he's always worried about. Now, if I'm talking to a sales head, his agents getting a report at the end of the day, an accurate report at the end of the day on what is the business that they have done, might be the biggest problem of the world, right? An agent attrition model where predictive analytics is required, while it is advanced and while it is more interesting and maybe more shiny, the sales head might not be interested in that at that point of time. So there is no dry cut answer to that, but I think the answer lies in really understanding what is it that's giving him sleepless nights, and that is what is going to be, for example, when I was working in one of my previous organizations, my CEO was interested in a particular space. So my CEO was very, very interested in setting up ML capabilities, AI ML capabilities, analytics and all, whereas some of my business users were interested in reports coming out accurately and timely to their concerned stakeholders. It was a sales head, its agent, right? And then I had the actuaries fraternity who were only worried about the quality of data, right? So as a chief data officer, I had to worry about data governance, which is monitoring the quality of data, ensuring that data is fit for purpose, understanding the data lineage, understanding where the problems are in the data lineage and correct them, and that's how you improve the quality of data. Working with a sales head to ensure that the PI is reaching out to him, the reports are reaching out to him on time, making it seamless. If there are any manual interventions, how could you cut that? More importantly, build a single source of truth, right? I mean, sales guys are, you need to ensure that you build a single source of truth, because you'll otherwise have two sales guys always coming into the meeting saying, this is what my sales number is. And yeah, classic case, like I've gone through that for the 10 years. So single source of truth is very important. They don't care for it and they don't understand it, but you need to be sure, you need to take care of it from that perspective. And then as I said, for the CEO, you need to, so you might be wearing multiple hats, Guru, I think there is no straight answer to that question. It could be anything, and you have to wear those different hats. If you are in a leadership role, if you're a head of analytics or a head of a data, depending upon what your roles are, you will have to wear different hats and balance it out.
Thank you. And I think you not only answered my question, you also answered my next question as well, which was on, from a high level perspective, we know sort of what is the importance and relevance of data management and data governance with regards to data science. I wanted some more depth, and I think you practically answer some of those questions. So, we are running short of time. So, is there anything else that you would like to share with the community? Any kind of insight which you think would add value to the community? Please do so.
So I think I just had one point to add, which is something that I very actively profess in my consulting role at SAS when I meet up with a lot of insurers is, and I believe this fraternity could do a lot, because I don't see any other role in an organization who can do this. That's only possible through this fraternity. These set of guys who are on the call here, and your 4 or 5 WhatsApp group, all those guys, they can do that. And which is, on one end of BI continuum, you have reports, right? And the organization is obviously their thirst is quenched with the reports that they get. And on the other end, you have advanced use cases where brilliant people like you come together and build models and drive analytics. Okay, I very strongly believe that there is a chasm, there is a gap, there is a void in between these two use cases, where a lot of value resides. I personally believe. I believe that there is a lot of money on the table That's it. And when I say that, I'm saying I don't have to even build a single model. And there is a lot of money I can generate for an insurance company or for a telecom, or depending upon where you are. I mean, I can certainly say that for an insurance company. And here are those set of users within an organization who is that smart guy in that claims department who takes that extra interest in what you are doing, who takes that extra interest in challenging you when you build a model. You have that sales guy who tends to be extremely curious about how did you arrive at this result. Most of the sales business guys don't tend to ask, but if you have, no, those are your guys, those are your audiences whom you should offload a lot of Gartner calls it citizen data scientists as a fraternity, who are basically business users who can be trained on some aspects of analytics. They'll never be able to take up the advanced use cases of AI, ML, and image modeling, NLP. No, they won't. That's not the idea. The idea is there is so much of data that's within the organization that the analytics team by themselves will never be able to do justice. There is always going to be, as Gartner calls it, the dark data, within the organization, which is never going to be touched, right? And you don't even know. That's like a blind spot. You need to, and we as a fraternity need to identify these users in whichever role you are. If you're working within an organization, identify this set of not many, 5 or 6 people, and get AI ML to them, get technology to them to use that tool smartly. Like a decision tree, my 12-year-old kid can understand what a decision tree is and how it works, right? Why can't a professional in sales or claims not understand what a decision tree is? Why can't an underwriter not understand what a decision tree is? I understand gradient boosting and other which are interpretability and all becomes difficult, right? I mean, it's just not possible. Even regression models or a GLM and all is relatively more like even a GLM model is if somebody were to get into a GLM model and understand how it is built, but I'm not suggesting a GLM model be handed over, but I'm just saying, how could you identify some of those interesting use cases and hand it over? And this fraternity then focuses on more important problems. I believe this need exists, this latent need exists within the industry. And there is only one fraternity which can make it happen, which is, which are these set of people, right? In my experience, I work with a lot of analytics people who are very insecure, right? Who are very closed, who want to hold and build a wall around them. I just don't believe that's the way that we can succeed as a fraternity, right? We really, really need to make believe the business guys that what we are doing is extremely simple. You can understand it. There are some areas I believe you can drive it better than me because you have much more business acumen than me, right? I will never be able to have the depth that you have in terms of business. And hence I believe these use cases, it could be a simple drag drop report, a sandbox that you offer to him where he can do his own analysis, where maybe, you could have ML driven NLG being run, so he just drags in data elements and like, for instance, he wants to understand what is it that's driving my claims cost up, and he drags claims cost in. And there is this AI ML tool which kind of just goes ahead and drives a complex ML model at the back end and gives him the English around it, right? Obviously, when we train them, we also need to tell them that any statistical model has its nuances, and it's a technical subject and everybody cannot pick up. But yeah, I believe this is an area which I believe the business would really appreciate, admire the analytics fraternity if we can add this value. This is just one point I wanted to leave with the team today.
That's quite insightful, and there's an added benefit in that you can have the business along with you. If you involve them, they will more openly collaborate with you. That's an added benefit to that as well. Thanks a lot, Anthony. And now I hand it back to Prakash.
Yeah, thanks, Guru. Thanks, Anthony, for giving us time. So and as usual, we start sharp 4 o'clock. We end sharp 5 o'clock because Sunday afternoon, no waste of anyone's time, and your time is also very important. Lots of things where I really feel like the community can take help from you, can learn from you. But at the same time, I have added you in those WhatsApp groups and other forums. Please try to contribute, and you are always open, always approachable. So please remain that for us, and I will quickly hand it over to Sanjyuti for the final thanking note. Over to you, Sanjyuti.
Thank you so much, Anthony sir. It's a pleasure to have you today with us. You really explained very well exactly where and how the business and analytics is merging. Your insights are very helpful for us. Thank you, Prakash sir, Guru sir, and the DS community for arranging such a insightful session and eagerly waiting for this type of session in future. Thank you, Ariful sir, for your contribution. We are grateful to have you with us. As mentioned by Guru sir, we have a LinkedIn group. We would like all of us to be a part of our group. Over to you, Prakash sir.
Thanks. So we can now conclude. So if in
Thank you.
Anthony want to touch upon, otherwise we will conclude.
Thank you all for having me here. It was a pleasure, and I just want you guys to know that I would learn a lot being part of this fraternity. So looking forward to the association. Thank you so much, and wish you guys all the best. Do well. Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you, Anthony, and have a wonderful rest of the weekend. I think evening, rather.
Yes.
And take care and stay safe. We'll be in touch. Thank you,
All of you.
everyone. Thank you.
Take care.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Bye.
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 Thank you all. Bye-bye.
Bye.